ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to trèSci Weekly, episode 14. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Ullman, alongside the prisoner of Azkaban, Tom Kaya.
Hey guys.
What's going on?
How's it going, my man?
Not too bad. How about you?
Doing well. Excited for episode 14.
Heck yeah, man.
Very excited.
So we did the old switcheroo. You normally wear the hat.
Yeah.
Now I'm wearing the hat, repping the Anchor Pools.
I was actually looking for my hat on the way out. Couldn't find it.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
I know. It's hard.
You want to borrow mine?
It's okay.
What's been going on, man?
Not much. Pretty quiet week for me.
Yeah.
Just doing my thing.
Same here. Yeah, not too crazy. Yeah, beat Resident Evil 4 finally.
Oh, nice.
I've been working on that for like 4 months. Yeah, other than that, reading a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Bunch of interesting news. Bunch of news stories that I read that were interesting that I didn't add to the list here. We were just saying actually prior to the show beginning that there was some news about the Cassini spacecraft doing its third flyby of the rings. We've been covering Cassini a lot though, so I didn't want to,
clog the tubes.
Clog the tubes, as they say.
Cassini news, yeah.
But yeah, some interesting stuff. They like didn't find any dust or any particles in between the rings and the planet's surface, and that was surprising. So that's cool. But we're not going to talk about that this week because I want to focus on some different stuff.
Yeah, got a few good different topics.
Yep. If you're joining us, welcome to the show. Thank you all for being here. This is our weekly video podcast where Tom and I go through some of the trending science news topics of the week and offer some of our thoughts and opinions on what's been going on in the world of science. You can, of course, chat with us live during the show on our YouTube Live channel. And we urge you all to subscribe to us if you like this content here. That, of course, helps us out tremendously. You can also go to facebook.com/trèSci Weekly, where you can like us, follow us there. We put up some supplementary, complimentary type articles that go along with some of the things that we talk about on the show. You can also follow us on twitter.com/trèSci Weekly, where Tom mans the helm there and retweets some of the stories that we were looking at throughout the week, so you have an idea of what we're going to be talking about on the show. And finally, if you'd like to back us financially, you can go to patreon.com/trèSci Weekly, and you can pledge any numeration of dollars, where that, of course, helps us do bigger and better things with the show. So those are all kind of our social media outlets that we like to
So get on that.
So I have to look. My computer's doing something a little weird here. So I want to maybe do this. And maybe do this.
All
right, we're safe. We're good.
Okay.
With all that said, Tom.
Yes, but before we get right into the news, I saw a few funny fake news stories. Not really fake news, but a lot of people calling out headlines of science for being misleading or misrepresenting facts just to get clicked on. And people have been reaming into that, and I applaud that,
Yeah.
When you see the bogus stuff out there, you got to call it fake news.
Yeah, oh yeah. We're going to call it fake news.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Anything in particular?
The biggest one was just when we were talking about signs of life on Enceladus with the plumes.
Right.
The
plumes of the molecular hydrogen.
Yeah. So they're saying found signs for life on the planet, even though there are no signs of life. There's conditions for life.
Jumping the gun a little bit there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So everybody, calm down.
Yeah. just tell the facts.
Yeah. There's no life out there yet, but we'll keep looking.
All right.
Nancy Kalia says, "Nice hat, cool banner too. Appreciate that."
The banner.
The hat, courtesy of Anchor Pools and Spa, my newest employer. So shout out to them. And the banner, it's courtesy of Kate getting that all made up for us. So yeah, we really enjoy the banner as well. Right. So I guess let's get right on into the news, Tom.
Let's do it.
There are 7 news items this week. Number 1, Congress has released the fiscal year 2017 omnibus funding bill, and it looks like science, research, and development fares well for the remainder of the year. This is in stark contrast to what the Trump administration proposed for the 2018 budget, and thus indicates that Congress may be more inclined to push back on the White House when it comes to funding scientific research. Some highlights include...
So before we get into the exact numbers, I just want to say we covered this story before, and the cuts were extremely big, and we were talking about how they were kind of unreasonable and unwarranted, and now this new one seems like it's in line with what we would expect and hope for.
Right. So, yeah, you're right. Yeah, to be clear on that, back in March, the Trump administration released its first draft, I guess, of the 2018 budget proposals, which was tremendously detrimental to science agencies, cutting a lot of funds that go to those agencies and kind of putting them into the defense programs and the military.
And some of the cuts were in on the scale of a third, or like 33% of the budget.
Yeah.
And now we don't see any cuts more than a couple percent.
Yeah. So this is good news, right? So let's break some of the numbers down here. The National Institute of Health, or NIH, will receive a $2 billion increase over 2016's budget, a 6.2% increase. The 21st Century Cures Act provides $352 million of those dollars, and of that increase, allocated towards biomedical innovation. NIH's National Cancer Institute increases by $475 million, or 9%. Alzheimer's disease research increases by $400 million, or 40%. The Precision Medicine Initiative increases by $120 million, or 60%. Antibiotic resistance research increases by $50 million, or 4%. And the Brain Initiative, brain research through advancing innovative neurotechnologies, will grow by $110 million, or 73%. By contrast, for fiscal year 2018, the Trump administration has proposed slicing NIH's budget by $5.8 billion, or 18%. So really,
as opposed to a $5.8 billion cut, they get a $2 billion increase.
Yeah, so really swinging in the other direction here, which I think is great.
Yeah, it seems like it's the right idea.
Yeah, medical research is much needed. Biomedical innovation, much needed. People are paying an arm and a leg for healthcare out there.
Might as well make it quality.
Yeah, so exactly. Might as well do some actual stuff with that money. NASA will receive a $368 million increase over 2016's budget, a 1.9% increase. Planetary science is the big winner, increasing by $215 million, or 13.2%, with funds allocated toward a mission to Jupiter's moon Europa and the Mars 2020 rover. Earth science and NASA's Office of Education does not get the axe proposed by the Trump administration, instead receiving funds that maintain 2016 levels of support. So, again, I think that's great.
Yeah, before we weren't too worried about NASA because they didn't even get that cut in the original budget. It was more like they wanted them reprioritized,
right?
Like we were saying, but they pretty much get what they need, I think, here.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, nice to see that they're not cutting their kind of outreach programs in education, because I think the more people that understand what NASA is trying to do, the more kind of beneficial for everybody. The Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, will see a slight decrease of $81 million, or just 1%. This is quite a bit less severe than the 31% cut that the Trump administration has proposed for the 2018 budget.
Yeah, so going from a third to 1%, that's like cutting all your programs to just reprioritizing your funds to make sure you're not wasting any money here.
Yep.
So it stinks that it's a little bit of a cut, but nothing drastic or crazy.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, sees an overall 1% decrease as well, but oceanic and atmospheric research actually increases by $32 million, or 6.7% within that budget. Climate research funding remains unchanged from 2016's budget, so I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And the National Weather Service, however, sees a $3 million decrease, or downwards of 11.6%.
So that one's kind of drastic.
Yeah, and which I also thought was
a little
kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, why?
The National Weather Service is, they do a lot of good services for just the general safety of all the people across the country.
Yeah, exactly. So that one struck me as a little strange, but nonetheless. The National Science Foundation, or NSF, the United States Geological Survey, or USGS, and the Department of Energy, or DOE's, Office of Science will all pretty much receive flat funding, meaning they won't really change too drastically here or there from last year's budget, which is nice to see. That's good news for our friends over at Brookhaven National Lab on Long Island.
Because they're funded by the Department of Energy.
Yeah, specifically the Office of Science. Mm-hmm. And the largest cut to DOE comes in the form of a $65 million slash, or downwards of 56.5% to ITER. And ITER is an international nuclear fusion reactor under construction in France. They're judging just kind of tangentially. There have been some kind of turmoil in who's running that whole situation over there. And just as a tidbit, Tom, ITER used to stand for International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, but now they've since changed that to the Latin meaning for the way. So, I mean, I guess...
make it sound better?
I don't know. It seems like that project just doesn't have a real clear...
goal or ending,
Yeah, so, not a big surprise that we're not funding it as much as we said we were going to. But it is what it is.
Yeah. So, before we move on to the next story, we made a big deal that it would be very detrimental, that first budget. This one seems pretty reasonable without any extreme changes or slashes that would really affect anything that we could say, this is going to get the knocks anymore. So everything seems to be okay.
Yeah.
In these budgets.
Again, to be clear, the original budget that we did report on in March was for 2018, and that still stands, right? Mm-hmm. But it looks like Congress, who has the ultimate say on what numbers and what levels of funding each agency kind of gets, doesn't look like they're taking much of a recommendation from the Trump administration or from the White House. It seems like they at least kind of have their heads on straight, if I can be so bold as to say that. So that's uplifting. That's enlightening to see, because
because there's another thing recently in the news. I don't know if you've heard about this healthcare stuff, but I'm kind of relating it to that, where at first this budget seems really bad, and we were saying, how can you cut the EPA by 30%? This is ridiculous. Whereas part of the other bill that people have been talking about seems ridiculous, but there are these processes that it goes through before it's finalized. And it seems that, it's like when you're trying to buy something and haggle somebody, you start off with something crazy. And when it comes to rules and policies and laws, starting off with something crazy when it's people's lives is kind of ridiculous. But that seems to kind of be the way to get your point across. You're like, this is what I want it to be.
Yeah.
And it's weird when we're looking at policies and things like that, like we have been. But in the end, this one sort of seemed out okay. So trust in the process a little bit, I would say sometimes.
Yeah, that's good. It means we won't be complaining about lack of funding for
all these agencies for the rest of the year.
Yeah, for at least until September. Yeah. So that's good.
All right.
Moving on. Number 2. Amidst controversy, Brazil's Ministry of the Environment has decided to partially outsource the monitoring of Amazon deforestation to a private company. Proposals were to be submitted over a 2-week time frame that closed on Thursday, May 4th, and the ministry now has 60 days to consider any bids for the $25 million annual contract.
So, right off the bat, that seems kind of weird to me when I was reading this.
Yeah.
So why would they need a private company to monitor their forests? Right off the bat, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, it does seem a little strange. We'll get into the nitty-gritty in just a second here. As it stands currently, Amazon deforestation has been monitored by the National Institute of Space Research. The acronym there is INPE, which doesn't match any of those letters there, but I assume that's a Portuguese actual kind of naming for the agency, whose flagship remote sensing program for monitoring deforestation of the Amazon by satellite, abbreviated to PRODES, uses data collected by satellite imaging techniques to identify forest clearings of 6.25 hectares or larger, and produces annual deforestation rates for the region.
So that seems to be a pretty reasonable way that they were tracking it using the satellites.
And so far, the PROS detection system has been pretty successful.
Yeah.
According to a report by INPE in 2015, quote, forest loss in the Brazilian Amazon dropped from more than 25,000 kilometers squared in 2003/2004 to an average of 5,200 kilometers squared per year between 2009 and 2013, end quote. But according to a study published in November 2016 by Brown University's Peter Richards and colleagues, quote, in total, we estimate that nearly 9,000 kilometers squared of deforestation was missed by the PROD system, or due to local level incentives to avoid observation. This area corresponds to an area roughly the size of Puerto Rico, end quote. So while INPE and PRODES will continue to monitor deforestation, the decision made by the Brazilian ministry to outsource is not completely unfounded. But critics skeptical of the decision say that there is an inherent conflict of interest at hand, pointing out that since the ministry will be paying a private company to measure deforestation, which is a duplication of efforts and a measurement of how well the ministry is doing its job, then it would be easy for them to pick the data that makes deforestation rates look the best. One of these critics, Thelma Krug, who is head of the ministry's program to combat deforestation, was dismissed from her position on April 19th. An online petition has been created to request a cancellation of the ministry's request, which I can share with you guys on the Facebook page if you're interested in that. And image credit for this one goes to Richards et al. So this was kind of a weird story.
Yeah. So, yeah, it doesn't seem to totally line up. Yeah, they weren't measuring the exact rate of the deforestation correctly. But it seems like the way they were doing it with satellites, it seemed like this is the way you're going to monitor it, and maybe you can do it a little more closely. But to pay $25 million in a contract without getting rid of that other research, like they're saying it's in addition to what they were already doing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. And it kind of reminded me of at the beginning of the Trump administration when they were trying to silence various agencies. Here, it made me seem like if it's a private industry and they have some sort of connections going on with each other, it just seems like a way that you could not pass along information that you've gotten from research for other incentives, like money and other things. That's the first thing that pops into my head, how this could go wrong.
Definitely. Kayla Riley and Karen Riley both comment in the chat that this sounds really shady, and I agree.
Yeah, that's basically what I said, yeah.
Yeah, in the one quote here by Peter Richards' study, in total we estimate that nearly 9,000 square kilometers of deforestation was missed by the PROD system or due to local level incentives to avoid observation. So, like, yeah, there's some backhand payment maybe going on to not report some of the deforestation efforts that are going on there. And, you know, the fact that Thelma Krug, who was head of this kind of program here, is dismissed from her position the day before all of these bids for this $25 million annual contract
it seems going. Obvious.
Yeah. So I think we're going to have to take a closer look at whoever is the winning bidder, right? Whatever company wins the bid here for this contract.
To see what they're,
Yeah, we'll have to keep a scrutinizing eye on what the relationship is between this ministry and who these people are that win this bid, because...
Yeah, and the take-home message for me from the article was that, you know, this is the forest, you know, the Amazon rainforest. It's basically the most abundant and diverse, biggest forest system out there. This is it. Yeah. No, this is the one you really got to be, you know, knowing exactly what's going on.
It hurts my heart when I hear people are cutting down the Amazon rainforest. Like, we don't get another one of those, you know? So... yeah, we'll keep trying to follow that story for you guys to see what we can dig up. Number 3. Speaking of forests, a recent study by Rachel Buxton and colleagues measures that human-made noise pollution, quote, doubled background sound levels in 63% of U.S. protected area units and caused a tenfold or greater increase in 21% of those areas. To quantify their measurements, the researchers recorded sound levels at 492 sites from the National Park Service, and measured the noise exceedance, or the amount that anthropogenic noise raises sound above natural levels. Right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be at a certain noise threshold so much as whatever the natural kind of sound level is. They're kind of measuring, okay, what are the noise levels above that?
Above the natural ambient sounds that would be there.
At 3 decibels above natural levels, noise exceedance doubles and effectively reduces listening area by 50%, whereas at 10 decibels above natural levels, noise exceedance is 10 times higher and effectively reduces listening area by 90%. The researchers argue that this has detrimental effects to natural ecosystems as, quote, noise pollution causes cognitive impairment, distraction, stress, and altered behavior and physiology in ways that directly influence both wildlife and humans, end quote.
Yeah, I never really thought about how much noise could impact the way things develop, but I guess it kind of makes sense. It's just an intrusive, invasive sound that doesn't really relate to your survival. It's just stuff that gets in the way, kind of, right?
Yeah, well, I like that they equate it to a listening area here, because the example that the study that I read in the study was like, all right, so you have a bird chirping that's, giving off its mating call, and now if there's an airplane overhead that's like dampening that sound, well then now this bird only has a much smaller radius of where its voice can travel to that can reach a potential mate. So noise actually really has a huge influence on ecosystems. Much of the noise is attributed to transportation systems, for example, roadways, aircrafts, etc., as well as the development of land and extraction of resources. Through analysis of the study's detailed noise exceedance map, Buxton and colleagues hope that management agencies such as the National Park Service can better facilitate noise reduction strategies. An image credit goes to Buxton et al. for that map that we put up. So I thought this was interesting because what we were just saying about how noise can affect mating patterns for different species, and they did speak a little bit specifically on how the noise levels are better for areas that have species that are on the decline, basically headed towards extinction. So that's good news. But yeah, I mean, I hate noise personally. So especially when I go to somewhere natural habitat, on vacation, if I'm trying to enjoy the natural presence of the woods or, a national park or something, I actually really hate being disrupted by presence of other people. So any attempt to reduce that, I think, is good.
Yeah. So I have 2 quick points before we move on. From the porch of my house, I find it interesting that you can easily hear the expressway, which is like a mile and a half away or a mile away. And you can hear the steady hum of the cars on the pavement. You can hear like when they hit the cracks, and it's just this sound that's always there. There's always cars on the expressway.
Yeah.
So that's just another sound that's always there. And I found it interesting that just like 3 decibels or 10 decibels, just these small increases would have such a large effect of an organism's ability to project its own sound.
Yeah.
Just like these small levels. And so if like an airplane was flying like directly overhead, that's like an extreme case where it would be even more than this, where you wouldn't be able to hear it at all. But this study was kind of interesting, not just these events that are happening, but like the ambient background noise just becoming higher and higher. It just as a natural cause of having more stuff.
Yeah.
It just is this weird thing that's increasing that nobody really knows what will happen when there's just more and more noise.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a weird thing to keep track of.
Yeah. I would say you probably are one of the people that is most in tune with how noisy just the overall ambient background noises of our habitat here on Long Island is through meditation.
Yeah, the more you sit there and try and listen to everything, you realize all the noises that are out there.
Yeah, I pointed this out to Kayla when her and I went to Iceland. We visited a kind of like a park there, like a national park sort of thing called Dimmuborgir.
What was it called?
It was called Dimmuborgir.
Okay.
Which is named for being the place where Lucifer fell from the heavens back down to earth, because it's got all these like craggy pillars of like basaltic rock, it's really crazy. And we were there in January, so nobody else was there. And we were walking around, and it struck me that there was actually no sound, no background sound. I pulled her aside. I was like, all right, listen.
There's just
do you hear that?
there.
And she was like, no, I don't hear that. I'm like, there's no sound. It's incredible. This is wonderful. So yeah, I don't like noise. I actually think that I get super distracted by high levels of noise. Like if we go out to the bar or something like that, I actually can't think straight. So I end up just sitting there really quietly because
drinking some beers until you get a buzz.
Exactly. All right, moving on. Caleb points out it's also the name of a metal band, Dimmu Borgir. So that's cool. Number 4. The next generation of printers may soon be upon us. In a study by Xiaolong Zhu and colleagues, a laser printing technique making use of nanoscale plastic polymers and germanium have been used to create ink-free high-resolution images. The polymers are shaped into many tiny pillars, each with spacing about 200 nanometers. A thin film of germanium is then layered over the polymer pillars, and a laser can then be used to heat the germanium in such a way that it slightly alters the thickness at each pillar, thus reflecting light at a precise wavelength or color.
So, just to go over that again real quick. So, we're taking these nanoscale plastic polymers, and as you make them a certain length, as they say, whether it's a few different changes in nanometers, just that change in height will change how the light is reflected off of it.
Exactly.
Right, to make different colors.
Yep.
So this is basically making colors just by manipulating the small nanoscale.
Yeah, so this works
Of light reflection, yeah.
Because in the visible wavelength of light, different colors are just a few hundred nanometers
away from each other.
Of wavelength different from one another, right? So red light is at about 900 nanometers, I think. And violet light would be around 300, 400 or so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just altering slightly that thickness can reflect a different color back into your eye. And we can actually get to that precision now, which is pretty cool. The resulting images can be produced at resolutions of 127,000 dots per inch, or DPI. By contrast, high-end inkjet printers on the market today achieve only about 4,800 DPI. Even more exciting is the use of this method for applications in 3D displays for encryption of data. Quote, to highlight the potential for future applications, particularly for three-dimensional display or encryption purposes, we use a polarization-sensitive color palette to create complex images by resonant laser printing at resolutions beyond the diffraction limit. By elongating the disks into bars, we show that the asymmetric structures can support tunable color under polarized incident light in the visible spectrum, in a similar manner to plasmonic structures. When the local cylindrical rotation symmetry is lifted, the response of our electric and magnetic dipole modes become polarization dependent, and colors can be switched continuously through polarization tuning, end quote. Now, there's a lot of jargon in that quote there,
yeah.
But basically what they're saying is instead of making the pillars kind of circular in nature, they make the pillars elongated so that if you rotate the way that the light kind of reflects off of those, they can basically change and tune the color. So this could be really cool.
You don't need just the length, then you could have, it matters the way it's oriented also to make the color change.
Exactly. So this could be really cool for 3D displays, basically, which sounds very futuristic, Tom, but could be upon us soon. Kyle, there's an image of the elongated kind of nano particles there.
Okay.
If you can bring that up, that would be I think it's called Printer 2 image there. So we're taking a look at that. Yeah, so you can see kind of in the top left section here, instead of those guys being perfect spheres, they're a little bit elongated here. So now the direction that the light hits those things will reflect it differently. And there's a couple videos now that we can show you guys of the color kind of changing as they rotate it around. So,
okay.
We'll bring up those 2 videos there for you in just a second. You let me know. Okay. So here's the first one.
And this is as they change the degree that the light's hitting it.
Right.
Because that's what's happening.
Okay. And let me know when you're ready for the second video there. Here we go. I think this is just kind of a little bit more zoomed out, so you see a little bit more. Pretty cool stuff.
So you can get a large variety of colors just by the orientation of it.
Yep.
It's pretty cool.
So this is exciting for what we were saying. This is probably going to be more on the high end of price point, especially as it first develops. But this is exciting for, like, you know, the art world, basically, of you know, creating lasting images that you know, hopefully can kind of change as you I don't know. as the light hits it differently.
Like we were discussing, I think it's just a better way of printing, and not by better, I just mean it's like a more precise, exact way to print images. Like it showed that you went from 4,000 dots per inch to like 128,000. It's just a more precise way to print because you're on the nanoscale. But like we said, you're not going to be printing out worksheets for the classroom with something like this. This is just the, like we said, the high end of printing. It's like the Ferrari of printers, right? Like you don't drive it around Patchogue.
Yeah, like you and me wouldn't need one. If we could get one, that would be cool. But
like we were thinking in the future, 3D printing with applications like this, when already 3D printers can do some pretty wild stuff, right? You could print out some pretty cool things. So far down into the future, we could be, you know, like we were joking around, like 3D printing all kinds of different structures that have different refractive properties and all kinds of really cool stuff that might be easily within reach that we can't right now.
Yeah. Who really knows what the final applications for this will be?
You could probably think about them forever, but
but I think that was pretty exciting. Moving on, number 5. Speaking of colors, Ryan Nash, friend of the program, tagged trèSci in a news story on Facebook, just like you can.
And I would like more people to tag us on Facebook or Twitter, because it's a lot cooler to talk about stuff when I already know that somebody else has thought about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you can have like a conversation with somebody about it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just kind of saying things about it.
Definitely.
So I would love the tags as you see anything.
Yeah.
Let us know.
I hope all you guys did your homework from last week. The homework assignment.
We had homework?
Yeah. The homework assignment that you gave everybody was to share one of the news stories with somebody new. So if you didn't do it, it's going to be a 0. But don't worry, we drop your lowest grade for the quarter, so it's fine.
Before the end of the quarter.
What a weird thing. Looking back on that, this is a kind of a tangent, but like when like a teacher is like, "Oh, we just drop your lowest homework grade for the quarter," it's like that's totally subjective. Like I used to think of school as being like this completely objective measure of
whatever
knowledge.
you get, yeah.
But it's really not. So kids, just suck up to your teachers and you'll get A's.
That's true. I knew a few people like that. I won't name names.
So Crayola, the arts and crafts manufacturer, best known for its crayons, has begun a sweepstakes for the naming of a new pigment of blue color crayon. Referred to now as Yinmin blue, being composed of the elements yttrium, indium, and manganese, the pigment was discovered in 2009 accidentally by Oregon State University chemist Mas Subramanian.
Yes.
When mixing black manganese oxide with a variety of chemicals and heating them to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
So they found a new pigment of blue. So it's just a new kind of blue.
Right.
And I think I was reading in the article, it's the first hue of blue that's been discovered in like 200 years, I think.
Yeah.
Which
is interesting.
Kind of weird. Like, how do you go 200 years and not finding a color to then just finding a color? It doesn't seem kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, but yeah.
It's just a blue. You know what I mean? It's like a funny thing to go hundreds of years without finding a blue, and then you just find a new blue.
It's true.
It's out of the blue. Yeah. That's kind of what I was going for.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I get it. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right. But yeah, pretty cool though.
Quote, the new pigment is formed by a unique crystal structure that allows the manganese ions to absorb red and green wavelengths of light while only reflecting blue. The vibrant blue is so durable and its compounds are so stable, even in oil and water, that the color does not fade, end quote. This is not the first commercial application for Yinmin blue, however, as electronics manufacturer AMD has already started using the pigment for its Radeon Pro WX series of graphics and video cards. And we have a video to share with you guys on the discovery of this blue color at Oregon State University.
Because remember, as we said in the beginning, it was accidentally discovered, correct?
Correct.
And that's kind of the point of the video.
Yep. So this video is courtesy of Oregon State University's YouTube page. And Kyle, whenever you're ready, let me know when to hit play on that bad boy.
I worked for DuPont before I came here as a professor. So I knew a little bit about color. And then I know that blue is the most difficult color to make. So immediately when I saw the blue color, I said, wow, what's going on here? My name is Mas Subramanian. I'm a faculty in chemistry department. I have a title called Milton Harris Chair of Material Science. Most of the research focuses on discovering new materials for electronics, environment. Well, I heard about Julie Green's work before even I discovered the pigment because she was having these blue plates, the Last Supper. So I knew about her work. And after this discovery was publicized by the Oregon State University, she contacted me and asked me whether I could give a lecture in her class.
I mean, to read about him in the New York Times and then ride my bike a mile and see that, it's pretty great thing about Oregon State. This fall, when I was teaching new genre, I contacted Mas and we were able to get enough of the pigment that the students saw were to make a small painting. And so they got to come to the lab and learn about the pigment and then make a tempera painting. So they did these studies, and then a few of the advanced painters did a follow-up paintings too.
What I borrow from the scientific experience or view or way of approaching the problem is that capacity to step back and have objective looks at all sides of what you're producing. I'm also interested in that dance of being fully engaged with the process, but also if you're doing it right, you don't have the final destination, you're just pushing yourself to keep dancing.
Sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. You may want to go someplace, but suddenly you see something and say, wow, I want to take a detour and then go and see this, what is it? Then you just sometimes stop there and do more things there than the destination. So whenever my students say the experiment didn't work, I always ask them, what do you mean by it doesn't work? Something has happened. Did you look into that more carefully? Because you don't know. Maybe you have made something better than what you're looking for.
What its value is for me as a painter who is really into creating space by using color rather than, line or any sort of other depth tools, that it's invaluable. I mean, I've long since left behind any notion of thinking that art and science were really very different to begin with, and I kind of think about the process of what they went through as being very similar to what we're doing in a lot of ways.
We're constantly engaging in these inquiries, cataloging what we find and pushing ourselves into new grounds.
It's really research and hypothesis-based. I wonder what would happen if I'll just keep doing this. So it's running tests all the time.
They begin with some ideas and then they keep on tweaking it because they are, oh, this looks better than what I thought. So they move. So same thing in science, we do the same thing. We tweak science to discover new things. Sometimes the journey is the most important thing. So I always tell my students, we are looking for a holy grail. That journey to find that holy grail may not be successful, but at the same time, the journey itself is worth taking it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool video. I like the way it sort of tries to combine the science and art to look at the new color, just from both perspectives.
Yeah.
As being an artist or a scientist, you kind of look at things the same way.
I very much agree. Yeah, science and art are kind of one and the same in my mind. So it's nice to hear that reiterated by a scientist and an artist, both at Oregon State. So thank you for sharing that with us, Ryan Nash.
Kayla, yeah, thank you for that, Ryan.
Yeah, very, very interesting story here on the discovery of this new pigment of blue.
And Kayla says now we can print this new blue on our new printers.
Exactly, and it'll last forever. I guess, which is pretty cool. So, any ideas for the name for the Crayola crayon, Tom?
I forgot. Yeah, they're letting people vote on the name of the new color for Crayola.
Yeah, I'll put that up in the Facebook page as well.
You can vote if you want.
I kind of just like Yinmin blue. I think it's kind of cool.
Yinmin blue. Yeah, just for the abbreviation of the elements.
Yeah. But I'm sure they'll come up
I
with
don't have any other ideas.
Yeah, they'll come up with something like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Jazzy ska blue or something.
Yeah,
something
some
crazy
alliteration
like that.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Moving on. Number 6. SpaceX has taken the next step toward making high-speed broadband internet available to everyone globally via a constellation of non-geostationary satellites.
I kind of want to stop you right there.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, high-speed broadband internet available to everybody globally via a constellation of satellites. So, I think it's really important when we're moving forward with these kind of technologies to look for the big picture, like the big jump, the big step, where not just slowly improve your infrastructure over time, like make this little change, that little change. Whereas this seems to be like a good solution to get really high-speed internet to a lot of people. Like it seems like a jump maybe of infrastructure, like we might not be able to go from here directly to that. So it might be hard to start thinking about to go from where we are to this. Mm-hmm. But I think what SpaceX is trying to do with a lot of their things is kind of revolutionize the way things are done.
Yeah.
Because they see just a better way of doing it almost. Like it just makes more sense. It brings higher quality service to a higher number of people.
Yeah.
And like it's a big jump. Like taking what we currently do for internet and then putting it all the way up into these satellites. It's a whole changeover. So I think that's going to be the hardest part. But as we move forward, I think it's important to know when we have the ability to move on to the next step, mm-hmm. right? Even if we do or don't, to know that we can and that we're choosing to go down this path or that path.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a virtuous goal because we here on Long Island already have high-speed broadband.
Yeah, we're like,
internet.
we got internet.
Yeah,
but
a lot of places in rural America and beyond worldwide, they don't have internet access at all, or at least they don't have high-speed internet. So this would be kind of leveling the playing field for everybody, which I think is
And eventually no one will lag anymore.
Yeah, which is
one
great.
day. A world without lag. That's where I want to live.
The company's VP of Satellite Government Affairs, Patricia Cooper, convened a hearing with the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation on Wednesday, May 3rd. The hearing, titled Investing in America's Broadband Infrastructure, Exploring Ways to Reduce Barriers to Deployment, allowed the committee to, quote, explore solutions to streamline broadband deployment and infrastructure, especially in rural areas, and how to encourage private investment in next-generation telecommunications services, end quote. This comes right off the heels of an application filed in November of 2016 with the FCC for a license to operate the satellites. The plan is for SpaceX to begin launching its proposed constellation of 4,425 broadband satellites as early as 2019 via the company's Falcon 9 rockets, which have just recently proved to be recyclable for multiple launches.
Ooh. So, we've showed them launch a rocket and land that same rocket, and this is one way to get these satellites into orbit.
Right.
We previously could not do that.
Right.
And now that we can,
this becomes way more cost effective, right?
Yeah. A lot of things become viable.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
SpaceX is not alone in its endeavor to set up a non-geostationary satellite constellation, however, as companies such as Boeing, OneWeb, Telesat, O3B Networks, and Thea Holdings, among others, all filed similar applications with the FCC. Image credit for this one goes to the European Space Agency, showing kind of what a network or constellation of these satellites might look like around the Earth. And it should be noted here also that Boeing was the first to file this kind of application with the FCC back in, I want to say, March of last year. And now all these other companies are kind of saying, hey, we want to get in on this also. But SpaceX looks to be poised to be the best company to actually
put those satellites into orbit. Yeah.
Right. So
whether you have the patent or not.
Right. Yeah, unless you have the infrastructure to actually
do it, then you're just going to sit on this and it doesn't help anybody.
Right. So one thing, definitely when you see the picture, right, the image, one thing that comes to mind is space debris, right? Space junk.
There's already a lot of stuff in space, and then 4,000 satellites is a lot of more stuff to put in space.
Right. So I mentioned to you before the show that it'll be interesting to see kind of what the specs are on these satellites, if they are upgradable, because as of right now, high-speed broadband internet kind of means in some capacity 25 megabit per second download speed, which that's kind of the standard that we have here with Optimum Online, which don't get me started on them. But I think that not far into the future, we're going to see file sizes continue to increase and increase and increase, right? Like a song is really only, a few megs, but a video can,
especially an HD video,
right, can go up to gigabytes.
And then if you get 4K videos, and
right,
it only there's only more taxing.
Exactly, it's only going to go up from there.
So your point is that if we're putting all these satellites up there needs to be some sort of feedback of where you can upgrade or change or patch as you go along.
Because I just don't feel like 25 megabits per second download speed is going to cut it for that much longer. And if that's our definition of high-speed broadband internet, well then, are we really doing anybody any justice by putting this?
I don't think they would put all these satellites up there and then say 25 megabit, is like our max. I think that if they can get all these satellites up there doing all these launches, I think it would be a dramatic increase, I think.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, not a dramatic increase, but I think just an increase that's big enough for everybody to make a big impact.
Yeah. Karen Riley asks in the chat, will we be able to get it here in Brookhaven, or does Cablevision have a ban on it already? I'm sure they already have a ban on it in the works because they're horrible. But I think this would be like your 4G LTE network in a sense, right?
Kind of for everybody.
Everybody. So, these satellites being non-geostationary satellites means that they're not kind of pinpointed to one location as the Earth rotates. So everybody would have access to a satellite that would cover the area of the globe proportionally. So, hopefully a world without lag, Tom. It's the world we dream of. And number seven, a press release from NASA came out on May 5th. And I want to read just a little bit here from it. Kyle's going to bring it up in the window here for us. The title says, NASA receives proposals for future solar system mission. NASA has received and is reviewing 12 proposals for future unmanned solar system exploration. The proposed missions of discovery submitted under NASA's New Frontiers program will undergo scientific and technical review over the next 7 months. The goal is to select a mission for flight in about 2 years, with launch in the mid-2020s. The New Frontiers program, Tom, is the same program that helped us put together the New Horizons spacecraft that gave us the first images of Pluto,
which were awesome.
Also, the Juno mission to Jupiter that is currently
that we're getting all these
images. Nice high-res images of Jupiter. So this is a kind of really cool program where we get to get a bunch of different topics to review. Selection of one or more concepts for Phase A study will be announced in November. At the conclusion of Phase A concept studies, it is planned that one New Frontiers investigation will be selected to continue into subsequent mission phases. Mission proposals are selected following an extensive competitive peer review process. Investigations for this announcement of opportunity were limited to 6 mission themes. I thought these would be fun to go through. The themes are Comet Surface Sample Return, Lunar South Pole Aitken Basin Sample Return, Ocean Worlds, and they were kind of limited to Titan and or Enceladus, both moons of Saturn, Saturn Probe, Trojan Tour and Rendezvous, Trojans being a group of asteroids that kind of
they trail along behind Jupiter or in front of it.
Exactly.
Because of the
Lagrangian points,
It's just a nice point for them to all fit in between the gravity of Jupiter and the Sun.
Exactly. And finally, a Venus in situ explorer. So we already know that we're going to get some Ocean Worlds exploration upcoming with the Europa Clipper mission. So that would be my first choice if it was up to me to like pick a proposal in one of these topics. But since we are getting Europa Clipper, it might be interesting to do something else. Saturn looks to be, another kind of big target here, but we do have Cassini just kind of finishing its grand finale of missions here. I like the idea of sample returns from a comet or from the moon because it'd be interesting to analyze space rocks with higher kind of precision in spectroscopy techniques that we have nowadays. We haven't really been able to look at those types of geologies in some years now. And Venus could be kind of cool, man. I don't know.
I haven't heard a lot of Venus news in a long time.
Yeah. So I don't know. What would your pick be here, Tom? What do you think?
I don't know. Tough to say, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't really have too much sway one way or another. I'm most excited for in the future though is the Ocean Worlds, like really getting some super convincing evidence that there's got to be life there, as opposed to just the conditions.
Yeah, a Titan mission would be really cool because that's the moon of Saturn that has an atmosphere, the only moon in our solar system that we know of that has an atmosphere. And they confirmed with the Huygens probe on board Cassini that kind of landed on the surface of Titan that there are liquid methane lakes on the surface of Titan. So another trip back there would be definitely interesting. So we'll see what happens in November. So obviously we'll keep you guys up to date on that.
We'll let you know what they plan on doing.
And that, Tom, is all the news for the week. So
yes, it is.
It is now time for Tom's Corner.
We're going to finish it off with a kind of what we were talking about before in the chat when we were talking about possibly implementing a new system of satellites for internet. And as Kara Cleater brought up in the chat, they probably would be able to bring up multiple satellites with a launch, but there's still 4,000 satellites. So it's going to require quite a bit of effort to get them up there. So as we're thinking from going from one infrastructure to the next, I kind of wanted to bring up a point of sort of the way things are done in the United States sometimes, where we're not so friendly to the newest idea or the newest implementation of the newest idea. And it made me think of what we talked about at Brookhaven National Lab when we learned that they invented the technology for maglev trains there, which are the super fast moving trains that levitate with using magnets. That's why they're called maglev trains. Kind of self-explanatory. But the technology that was invented here, we never got a maglev train in the United States, but there's been maglev trains in other countries for quite some time now. So I always question when I hear like a new technology or something new on the horizon, how much resistance is really out there to get it put into play, because there's a lot of money being made in that industry already. How much resistance is there going to be to accepting these new ideas?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something that we need to keep in mind and realize that these people are really out for their own interest a lot of times, and to try and keep that in our mind and keep them in check as we're looking at new opportunities as we move forward.
Yeah, definitely. Right? I brought up some information about the maglev trains here. The image that you guys just saw is of the Shanghai maglev train, the world's fastest passenger train. Exceeds 267 miles per hour regularly, which is really fast.
Yes, for a train.
Yeah, would be really nice to have one of those to shoot us here on Long Island to and from New York City. That would be pretty cool.
I mean, we invented the technology right here on Long Island.
Yep. The only other currently operational maglev systems serving the public are the Linimo in Japan and the Daejeon in South Korea. So, yeah. So right now,
these systems are working great, and they're an advancement in technology of traveling that has been implemented there.
Right.
And they've seen success. You know, they're not like, oh, we should not have done this, you know.
But the train industry, right, the railroad industry here in the United States, there are lobbyists, people whose job it literally is to stall the progression of science and these technologies.
So they can keep their...
in political spheres so that they, you know, people don't lose money, basically.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
The stakeholders, right, don't lose the funds that they're getting from the passengers of these pre-existing systems.
Yeah, so a lot of times you meet so much resistance where it doesn't even make sense to go into it.
Yeah.
Because, there's too much blocking you from really getting started.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't even imagine how many things we've probably reported on that will never materialize.
Because of, just roadblocks that we don't want to see that.
Yeah. So, kind of sad. Nancy Kaluta says, big business squashes innovation and has huge lobby systems. Money rules. Yeah, and that's the unfortunate truth to this whole kind of process that we have here. Unfortunately, unless you have money and pioneer an idea like Elon Musk and SpaceX, you can't really make a lot of progress fighting against
these pre-existing
things. These pre-existing things, because there are people whose, like I just said, whose job it is to literally hold us back, right? So definitely a point to be raised, but knowledge is power. The more everybody knows about these technologies,
I think hopefully this won't be the commonplace for that much longer with how much news is readily available. It'll be clear in our faces, like, why can't we move on and things like that, and hopefully it gets harder to hold these type of things back.
Yeah, because we want to implement some of these really great ideas into our future
in the relatively near future.
It would be nice to see them, and like you said, it's important for us to recognize when we have the ability to make a big leap forward, and
then we choose not to. Yeah.
Right, and
you need to know that we're making that choice.
Yeah, well, and the public needs to be informed of where they can go to maybe vote on some of these big changes, whether or not they want to support some of these big leaps forward. Because I think not too many people are informed about this. You know, unfortunately, not too many people even here on Long Island know about the maglev train systems.
Yeah,
and it was, like you said, developed here. So knowledge is key. We'll keep bringing you guys the scientific research stories so that we can all maybe do a better job of
staying informed
and supporting what we think we should support going into the future. So that's kind of it for the show for this week. We'll hang out in the chat for a little while longer. Anything else you wanted to add?
Not too much else. I want to catch up on Genius on Nat Geo. I have a DVR that I haven't watched yet. That's the Einstein show.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of it either.
Yeah, I still have DVR. I'm going to probably wait till it's over and then just watch them all in a row because I don't like waiting. Cool. But I'm going to definitely get on that.
Yeah, you want to watch them together?
We can watch them together. And then otherwise, not too much else.
Yeah.
Just Carrie made a good point in the chat. Driving along the Amtrak train, same thing as driving a car. You know, going 68 miles an hour, but you can't ride alongside the maglev.
No,
you're going 267.
Yeah, unless you're Kyle.
Yeah.
Oh. Kayla says, I wish I got to take a maglev train instead of the LIRR. Agreed. The LIRR is ridiculously overpriced
and you get there in a quarter of the time.
Yeah, poor service. All right. That's pretty much it, guys. So thank you guys for joining us this week. We'll be back again next week with some more science news for you.
And don't forget, anything that you see in the science community, feel free to tag us.
Tag us. Email it to us at trèScimail@gmail.com. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. Follow Tom on Twitter. Follow trèSci on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter if you want. And give us money on Patreon. No, I'm just kidding.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you all next week.